Lovely. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. As well as doing falls and the exercises for osteoporosis, my background is falls prevention, so in order for me to be here today, I have to tell you a little bit about preventing falls as well. My colleague Sharon will be joining me when we do the exercise part, and what we'll do is, when I did one of the talks previously, we did all of the exercises in seating. So today, I'm going to give you the option that if you fancy standing up to do a couple, then you can. But if you want to stay in seated the whole time, Sharon will be doing the exercise in seated the whole time. Okay, so falls in the UK. All through our life, we fall over. If you think about grandchildren and little people, when they learn to walk, they're falling over very often and they go down with a bump, but they're not worried about falling. Hot days, generally you stand still, and it's always fun going up to London and watching the changing of the guard and trying to work out which one of them is going to fall over. Very often it's because it's the one that's flat-footed and they've passed out because of the heat and because actually they've had 3 or 4 pints the night before and they're not hydrated enough. So, if nothing else from this session to go away with, hydration, having enough to drink, is one of the most important things in preventing falls, because if you're hydrated, then you can think what you're doing and your blood pressure doesn't drop as much. Okay. Problem is, when you get older, is when you fall over and you hurt yourself. I'm somebody that falls over frequently, but it's only on the last couple of times that I've fallen over that I thought, that's really hurt. Have I broken something? And I really don't want to have to go to A&E and say, I've broken my wrist because I've done something stupid. And very often when I think about why I fall over, it's because actually I'm rushing. I'm trying to do 3 or 4 things at any one time. I'm trying to answer the door, I'm trying to carry things as well. So if you are somebody that does fall over, just taking your time and saying to family members, give me a couple of minutes to answer the phone, ring it for a long time, you'll reduce the number of falls that you have. We become fallers when our bodies don't keep up with us. For our balance, we need good eyesight, we need a good nervous system, we need muscle strength, and we also need to be cognitively aware of the dangers that are going on around us. If you get a deficit in one of those systems that your eyesight fail, you may still be able to manage and not fall over. But if you get deficits in more than one system, then actually the falls become more frequent, and it's how you then adapt to make it change. But what we've got to do in order to stop ourselves becoming people who fall over when we get older is to maintain our strength and balance. And the evidence is that we need to be walking around for up to 4 hours a day in order to maintain what strength and balance we've currently got. Ladies, we're designed to potter. We don't need to do all of our exercise in one go. We can do 5-10 minutes in the morning, 5-10 minutes after lunch, and then another 5-10 minutes in the evening. Men, you can get away with exercising half an hour at a time, but actually it's much better if you keep going and keep pottering us like us ladies do. So pottering and doing your exercise is good. So some of the exercises, when we go through them in a little bit, I might say this exercise is really good for balance. Include it when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. And I've spoken to 3 people during the course of the morning who've all said that they tend to fall over because they're catching their feet. They're tripping up pavements. A couple of ways to prevent that is actually to have footwear that's got the toe going upwards rather than ballet flats, feet flat to the floor. But also the exercise where actually you've got your heels to the floor and you're picking your toes up, because that's going to strengthen the ankle. So we'll be doing those exercises, but that's one exercise that every time you're waiting for the kettle to boil, you could be doing 10 of those exercises and working on your ankle strength. People with osteoporosis, 95% of hip fractures are caused because of people falling over. However, rolling over in bed, if you've got osteoporosis of the spine, can cause a fracture. You don't have to fall for those ones. And that's why we're wanting you to look at being strengthening. Reasons as well behind people falling. When we ask you about falls, we're asking you to think why you fell. Was it to do because of your eyesight? Were you looking through when you were walking the near distance part of your eyeglass? Were your glasses dirty? Or for some occasions, in our house actually, my husband was walking around in my son's glasses the other day because they're very similar, and then wondered why he walked into the door. So the right glasses, regular eye checks. And if you've got a family member who's at home and can't get out to have their eyes tested, Specsavers are now doing a lot of home appointments. So ring them up and ask them about their home visits. And Tesco's, the big eye stores, they're actually offering free eye checks to all adults because they firmly believe that eyesight's important. So as well as being free eye checks, once you're 65, you can go to Tesco's and have them tested for free as well. That's not an ad for Tesco's, it's just fact. Risky behaviour is one of the biggest reasons why we fall over. And certainly the last time I went to A&E with a fall and needed stitches was because I was dancing, I'd had alcohol, and I was wearing inappropriate footwear. You know, 4-inch heels, not safe. Craig might be able to do it, but I can't. So for me, I've either got to dance or I've got to sit and have a drink, but not the two. Falls outdoors. If you're somebody, when you walk around your house, you're holding onto the furniture, you touch the table, you touch the wall as you walk around, it's going to mean that you're going to need some kind of walking aid when you're outside because your balance isn't quite good enough for you to walk unaided. And accepting a walking aid is one of those things in this country that people think, I'm not old enough for a walking aid, I don't want it. Walking's a really good exercise for muscle strength and keeping yourself healthy, but some of you who I've spoken to today, I've suggested that if you don't like a walking stick, then actually try walking poles, because as you walk, they help you remain upright. They give you sensory feedback from the ground, and it also means that you can then look where you're going rather than looking at the floor. Trolleys. If you were to go to the Scandinavian countries, there's a lot of 50-plus people who actually have trolleys when they go out shopping. 1, because they're not carrying stuff, but 2, because they can walk for a lot further, 3, because they've then got somewhere to sit and have a chat. So I think the Scandinavian way and having trolleys at an earlier age is a good idea. We've talked about vision, so I'm going to gloss over that. Cataract surgery does reduce falls, but I was really surprised to find out that when you have a cataract surgery, what you've then got to learn to do is to relearn distances, because you've got used to judging distances with the cataract in place. So you have your cataract surgery, and then suddenly the distances changes. So you've then got to relearn those things. So again, it's adjusting, taking your time, making sure that you're scanning the environment, looking for hazards. Sensory impairment team through social services for people who've got eyesight problem and also hearing problems. They do an excellent service where they do home visits and they'll come out and actually look at the adaptations that might be appropriate for your homes. And if anyone wants the number, then I can either give it to Margot or you can ask me later for it. Medicines, they have a huge impact on why we fall. Polypharmacy is 4 medicines or more, and as we get older, our bodies have more problems dealing with medicines. We don't get rid of them as quickly, and we end up with a building up in our system. So it's really important that you look at the storage of your medicines. Are they stored where it's ambient, between 8 and 20 degrees Celsius? Because very often when I go out and visit people at home, their tablets are in the kitchen cupboard next to the cooker. So how effective are they then? So it's where you store them. Also, have you had them checked recently? Do you still need to be on all of the tablets that you're on? Antidepressants, very often when people are started on an antidepressant, it can make them feel dizzy, it can make them feel quite sick to begin with, and they don't always say to you that the side effects are going to take a couple of weeks to last. Diuretic tablets, very often they say take in the morning, but actually if you take them with your breakfast, that urgency to go to the toilet straight away is reduced a bit. And it's taken me 6 years to actually persuade my dad that actually, please Dad, take your diuretics with your breakfast, not when you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then actually you're not going to have that, everyone out the way, I need the toilet now. So he now wishes that he'd listened to me 6 years ago. We could talk about medicines for a long time, but that's another talk completely. But the community pharmacist, if you want advice on your tablets to make sure they're the right ones for you, they're a really good person to go and actually have a talk to. And if you have got changes that you haven't seen your doctor for a long time about your medicines, one of the things that we advise is rather than book an appointment and go and see your GP, write them a letter and say, I want to discuss my tablets and my appointment is when, because actually they then know what you're coming to do and they can prepare that they've got all of the information ready when they then come and see you. Feet, really important. You need to look after your feet. Very important for balance. When you're buying new shoes, recommendation is that you buy your shoes in the afternoon, and that when you try your shoes on, that you make sure that you've got room to spread out your toes and give them a wiggle. Also, that you've got lace-ups, a chance to show off the orange lace-ups with osteoporosis. If I'd thought about it this morning, I should have put my trainers on with my orange laces, but I didn't think about it. But your footwear can mean a big difference to how you're walking and to your gait and your balance. So, Cozy Feet, Hotter, they all do really good footwear, but also the online slipper shop do all of those shoes. They've also got the DB shoes, which if you've got swollen feet, which are swollen up rather than swollen wide, they've got more fabric as part of the shoe, so actually they're a lot more comfortable as well. Socks. Had a lady this morning whose one of her issues is that she gets lots of psoriasis on her feet, and when they get very hot, it becomes more itchy, more uncomfortable. You might have heard about the bamboo socks and the cotton socks. They're very good at keeping your feet cool and keeping your feet at an even temperature. Cold feet, they're very stiff, makes it harder for you to walk. So if you have been sat for a long time, get your feet moving, get the circulation going, and then that'll help you walk better. So, we've talked a little bit about shoes, and they're the unsafe shoes. And if you look at the black shoe on this slide, you'll notice that the front of the toe goes up slightly, and that's what I was talking about when you have the shoe or the slipper going up, because that helps you pick up and not trip over pavements. I'm whizzing through this because I want to do the exercises, because that I know is the bit that you've come for. Feeling dizziness when you're falling is one of the questions that very often people say, oh, I fell, I tripped over something, and we look for an excuse as to what we fell over. Part of that is because we want it to be explained, and part of it is that because if we turn around and say, actually, I have no idea why I fell over, you feel quite silly. But one of the questions that when you see the falls team or you see one of the nurses and they say to you about, can you talk to me about your fall? Did you feel dizzy? Did you feel unwell beforehand? What we're trying to do is work out whether or not there's a medical reasoning behind the fall. So we'd like to know then whether or not you felt dizzy all the time, whether or not it came on quickly, or whether or not you felt dizzy on turning your head to one side and the sudden movement. Very often people who've got lots of arthritis in the top of their shoulders and their neck, when they turn their head to the side or they look up, they then feel dizzy because the blood flow is cut off a little bit. And what we then have to do is we have to adapt the activities of daily living for them. So instead of saying when you're hanging out your washing, putting your head up like that, it's the stepping back and arms up, but that's stuff that we work people with them when we've worked out why they're falling or why they're dizzy. We also want to know how long the dizziness lasts. Does it last all day? In which case, you need to see a doctor sooner rather than later, and it'd be one of those appointments that when you speak to the receptionist and they say, do you need to see a nurse today? You'd be saying, yes, I do, or a GP today. What makes it better is another question. Very often, if people have had Meniere's disease, which is very common in women from their 40s onwards, alcohol makes it worse, not eating regularly makes it worse, and also not drinking properly makes it worse as well. So dizziness as well, is it improved by making sure that you're properly hydrated? Sometimes you may find that when you stand up, you get what's called postural hypertension, and that's because there's a drop in your blood pressure. Now that could be due to medication that you're on, it could be due to the fact that you're dehydrated, it just could be the fact that you've got stiff because you've been sat for a long time. But the advice that we do give, that if you do feel dizziness on standing, is that before you walk, that you get your feet moving, that you stand up, and then you make sure you're steady before you walk off. Also that you have your blood pressure checked, and when we ask for blood pressure being checked, we're looking for a lying and standing blood pressure to be done, because we're checking for the postural hypertension. So we'd ask that you have a lie down for at least 15 minutes, have your blood pressure done, and then have your blood pressure done again in standing. And if you're somebody that can't stand, what we would then do is your blood pressure in sitting, so that we've got a lying and sitting blood pressure, because that will still give us an indication as to whether or not postural hypertension is a problem. A couple of gentlemen that I know, they swear by their morning coffee to help them to stop feeling the dizziness in the morning. And we all hear that caffeine's bad for the blood pressure because it keeps it high. But actually sometimes the early morning coffee is quite good because it keeps the blood pressure then static and stops it falling rapidly. We've talked about hydration. Talk about it a lot because it really is so important. Environmental risks, we can all go in your houses. I'm having to declutter my house because I've suddenly realised that I'm going to people's houses and they've got the piles of magazine, and yet when I come home, by the side of the chair, there's all the bits and the jobs that I need to do. So I need to make sure myself that I've got clear pathways and I'm not collecting lots of stuff. Fire service are doing home visits at the moment, they're home visit safety checks. So if anybody wanted to have a fireman come out and do a safety check at their home, you can contact the fire service through their website, and they'll actually arrange to come out and do a visit and look and see whether or not there's any environmental changes that they can help support with. If you know that there's an area in your house where you're falling frequently because of a step, then you can also contact Occupational Therapy Direct yourself. And on the social services website, there's a telephone number there as well, which you can make a self-referral for and say, could somebody come and do an assessment for rails or equipment? Transport, I've had one lady who's frequently falling over at the moment when she goes to catch the bus. And part of it is because of it's the height. She can no longer get her knee up to get on the bus. And what we've done is we've worked with the local council and also the bus company so that where she catches the bus along that bus route, they've actually raised the pavement a little bit so that there's less of a step when people get on and off. And you'll notice probably if you're somebody who catches public transport that a lot of pavements have been raised so that it is easy to get on and off of buses. So actually having a conversation with the council and saying, I've got a problem, is there anything that you can do about it? Or even like we did with another village local to where I live, is we've actually had the bus stop changed to somewhere where there's a better pathway and there's better lighting. So they are quite happy to listen. I've covered these bits already. Getting up from the floor, even if you're not somebody who falls over, it's worthwhile having a plan. As to how you get up from the floor, looking at what pieces of equipment is stable, what you could use to actually get up from. Could you crawl? Could you get a phone if you needed to call for help? Is there somebody that you can ask for help to get up from the floor? Our local NHS classes and the Better Balanced, Steady and Strong classes, very often we will, as part of that, run sessions on getting up from the floor, and we will teach those techniques as well. If you can't get up from the floor, important thing to do is not to panic. When you panic, you make it worse. And that's one of the reasons why one of the ladies says to me, that's why she can't get up, is because she goes into a panic. So calm, relaxed. Once you're on the floor, you're not going to go any further. Take your time. Check to see whether or not you're injured. Really important. Also, if you come across somebody else and they've fallen, very often you'll find that they'll come along and they'll scoop you up before you've even had a chance to check that you're injured. It's important that you've checked. Keep warm if you can't get up. Keep moving. If you need to have a wee, try and move out the patch so that you don't get cold. And then, again, if you can get to something solid to pull yourself up on, that's great. Once you have managed to get up, if you've got up, make sure that you've rested. Make sure that you inform your doctor or somebody that you have had a fall. Make sure that they're aware about it. And if you're somebody that's had 2 or 3 falls in 24 hours, then that isn't urgent for the GP to actually do a review, because there's something going on other than the fact that you're falling over.